Hi, welcome to the Pole Shift News. I'm Gene from the Mathstar Observatory, and I'm holding in my hand the first completed PCB board. You can just see all the components on the back there, the capacitors and resistors that we've put on. We've put on the 6-pin block and two brass standoffs that clip it onto the board. You'll see it a bit later on in the video. But this really is testament to what we can achieve if we work together, guys. I mean, we are dealing with the same technology here with these Sipms or silicon photomultipliers as what organisations such as NASA, the European Space Agency, CERN, and that observatory down in the Antarctic region, IceCube. They're all using these same components that we are. There's no difference. If we've got the skills to put these things together, and we've got the knowledge, and we get a little bit of funding, there's no reason why we cannot give them, as we have done over the last few years, a good run for their money. We know that they're reluctant to come out with the information that we want, especially with pole shift news, like, where is the magnetic pole, for instance. These organisations are reluctant to come up with, the answers that we're asking, and the only way we can get those answers answered, guys, is by working together, building the equipment that we need to answer the questions, and then finding out for ourselves what is the case. A few years ago we set ourselves the task to build the TriMag system, and it's worked really well over the last 2 years. We've had to place one of the tracks on the TriMag, but that has been it's been very reliable, and it's kept taking samples every 3 seconds for 2 years. Can you believe it? Day and night, doesn't have any holidays, and doesn't stop. And we've collected now solidly for 2 years the data on the position of the magnetic North Pole. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted to work out the rate at which it is migrating across the northern hemisphere. We then asked the question, if you remember, where is the where is the field strength? What is it at? So we again set out to build the correct equipment, and we can measure the magnetosphere strength now efficiently, as we do every 15 minutes. And recently, over the last month, we set out to build these because the question is that we are obviously experiencing a lot of cosmic radiation coming through our atmosphere, through our solar system, and there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason was because of the anomaly taking place right now with the Sun, the grand solar minimum. As you can see from the graphs that I've showed you, we are looking at sunspots completely disappearing, despite some people coming out and saying that we are going to get a stronger solar cycle 25. I've not seen any evidence to show that. All I've seen is the evidence over the last 3 solar cycles, and you can see that the chart exponentially disappears. So we are going to continue, as far as I'm concerned, until we see an improvement in sunspot numbers. And remember, they've got to beat solar cycle 24 before we establish an equilibrium. And to this date, as you can see, if you look at the solar disk, there is no sunspots. But what that does is reduce our heliosphere. And it's a little bit like the Earth's magnetosphere that protects us from cosmic radiation. Only the Sun's heliosphere protects the whole of the solar system. So if it shrinks, it will allow more cosmic radiation in, and that is exactly what's happening right now. The heliosphere is shrinking as a result of low solar activity, and as a result we're getting more cosmic radiation in. On top of that, guys, we have a weakening magnetosphere, and it is not yet established at how much it has depleted, but the word out there is it's around about 20 to 25%, which is a quarter of our total protection gone. Now you add on to the fact that we've got more cosmic radiation inbound as a result of a low solar output or a grand solar minimum, and that means there will be more cosmic radiation coming through our atmosphere, and that is why we've set out to build these muon detectors, because these will detect the crashed particles of cosmic rays hitting other particles in our atmosphere, and as a result we get more muons here on the surface of the Earth, and these detectors detect that. So we are actually, with these devices, building something which is detecting things much smaller than atoms themselves, and these fundamental particles which make up atoms are the actual molecules that we are detecting. Sorry, not molecules, but particles. So to date we've been very lucky. We've had some good support this year, and over the last month we've had some good support, but it really needs to continue. We have got enough components to build a handful of these at the moment, and I'm hoping that before I go on my travels in about 10 days I will actually have one of these working, and I'll leave it running so that we can get an idea of how much cosmic rays are coming through our atmosphere at around about this time. But the idea is to get these out all around the world in the different locations, so that we can, find out how much radiation is inbound in the weakest areas of the Earth's magnetic field. Right now that is, as you know, probably the South Atlantic anomaly, or the lowest region of intense magnetic intensity on our planet right now. So if we could get one of these in Brazil and one in South Africa, we can work out what the yields of low intensity bring back with regards to the amounts of cosmic rays. And if we can put them also in the high intensity regions, we can work out how much protection you have actually right now on this Earth in one of those regions. The good thing about this is that we're going to be able to move these muon detectors around or place them in new locations. We've got the ability to build 20 of them. We've got the PCB boards at least. We haven't got all the Sipms that we need, and they're quite dear. That little chip on there in the centre that you can see is £88. You can get them for £24, but in order to do that you've got to put an order in for 3,000. It clearly prices us out of being able to get our hands on these cheaper. And there's a few things I'd love to build with these, like an array of these in a big cube, so that we could work out the direction of where these cosmic rays are actually coming from. And that really is what that observatory down in the Antarctic region has been set up to do, the one called IceCube. What they've done is they've core drilled over a square kilometre, I believe, series of holes, and they've dropped these photosensors down into the holes on long ropes, and they're trying to work out where these particles are coming from. They believe that they may have found one of the sources, which is a blazar in outer space, and of course this black hole in the middle of the blazar is bombarding lots of cosmic radiation out, and they believe they may have found that could be one of the sources. But there are lots of sources for cosmic radiations, as you know. Supernovas is another one. But really why we are building these is because we know our Earth is going through some major changes. First of all, the magnetic reversal. The first time it happened was 780,000 years ago. Secondly, we're in a grand solar minimum where the sun is having a low output, and as a result of both of these, the problem is being probably multiplied as a result, and we're getting more cosmic radiation in. But mainly it poses a health threat to all the biodiversities on this planet, and there could be safe regions on this planet already, and there could be regions on this planet which are probably considered by medical experts at risk, let's just say that. But the only way we can find out for ourselves is if we continue with this project and we get these out. The only other thing I can say, guys, is a massive big thank you to the patrons that are supporting us, and those people that make those one-off payments on Patreon. Without you guys, I couldn't simply afford to build all these myself. I've got the time, I just don't simply have the money. I do have the enthusiasm, because after a few more of these videos, we'll talk about how I got interested in science. And one thing I do have is a natural passion for it. I didn't study science to get a job in science. I studied science because I was actually interested in, just the simple things like, how is an atom even discovered? How do they bond with other atoms, and the chemistry behind that. And I just love the rock cycles and things like that of this planet, and the amazing fact that this planet exists in our solar system and supports life to the way it does. That's just some of the things we can talk about in later times in other videos. But mainly I just wanted to do this video for you today, first of all because I know some of you haven't seen me, you hear me a lot, so at least you get an idea of who's behind the camera now. And I just wanted to say that we have completed the first of our 3 PCBs, and you can see me doing that later on in this video. The only other thing, guys, is I wanted to say before I end the intro on this, and it's a bit of a long intro, but the only other thing I wanted to say is, what, guys, we need to keep the support going for the observatory in order to finish these off, because these have cost up to now £2,000. You wouldn't believe the amount of suppliers that have been involved in getting some of these components, and we've been lucky that some of the suppliers have been willing to let us have small amounts, like well, I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to get the company's name wrong, but I will mention them because they deserve to be mentioned. They're the guys that made the PCBs. I think it was off the top of my head, Minotron Limited. It's a British company that manufacture PCB boards, and Paul there, the director of the company, sent a very nice letter to me the other day and thanked me for mentioning him in the video. And he's only more than pleased to manufacture more of these boards in those low quantities that we want. And we're lucky to have found a silicon photo multiplier supplier that will supply again in low quantities, but of course when you're buying in small quantities the cost goes up, so we can't have it always, guys, but at least we're still in the market to be building them, and that's the main thing. So what's going on over the next week or so, we'll be completing the main PCB board. We'll be putting this together, and hopefully by the end of next week I'm hoping we'll have the first of the muon detectors working. It won't be in its housing. I've got to build a box for it. I've got to source a supplier for the particular box that I want, because I want to change the box that we're using for the magnetometers. I want to put it in a nicer box than that if we can. So guys, again, we'll leave it here. I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. If you're interested in just seeing how these things get put together and the different stages of that, then that's there. But more importantly, guys, I have to mention the link, and I know some of you don't like me doing it, but without the funding to build these, we simply don't build them. So the link is down there if you want to support us. You can support us on Patreon, and of course you can make a one-off payment on Patreon, but the main thing is that it gets supported and this project gets finished. So I'll say what I usually do. Great big thank you to all those that have been helping, and as always, bye for now. So okay, we're going to start by assembling first of all one of our PCB boards, the one that the Sipm gets attached to. So we're going to solder the Sipm on there. There's 2 points on there, and if you look at the green, the silver screen, you should be able to see where pin 1 is on the Sipm. And I'll show you the Sipm a bit later. You're not probably going to be able to see where pin 1 is on the Sipm, but if you look at Sipms under a microscope, you'll see that one of the corners has an extra little prong on it, and that indicates where pin 1 is, whereas all the others are symmetrical. So what we're going to do, we're going to first of all mark 4 holes for the cinculate, which is this crystal block here, and the purpose of doing this now is a bit later on, once we've got the Sipm on the actual PCB board. We don't want to mess about with it too much, so as soon as we get the holes drilled in the cinculate, we can place it on there, we can solder the Sipm on, and then that side of the PCB board is done. But just before I do that, I've got a couple of resistors and a couple of diodes to solder on the back there on those points. So we've got it all set up here, ready to go. As you can see, we've got the soldering station ready to go. I've selected a couple of standoffs which are going to be sufficient for it, and this just allows this PCB board, once it's populated with the components, just to be screwed on there, and it should have at that point the Sipm and the singulator on that side of the PCB. What I'm not going to do is run the video whilst I'm putting all these bits together. I'm just going to show you when I've completed it, because it would be like watching paint dry for you guys, a bit boring. So I'll get on with it. First of all, I'll get the screw holes mounted and screwed on the PCB for the Sipm, and we'll get the singulator added onto it, and then I'll show you where we are once we've got to that point. We have the PCB board which holds the Sipm mounted now onto the singlet block. The reason why I've done it now is I don't want to be messing about with drilling holes in the singlet. This is something that's got to be got right first time, and as you can see, it's pretty square on the singlet block. So now I'll unscrew it. I used probably size 1 or size 0 screws. As you can see, there's a variety of screws and nuts in there, but they're very, very small and perfect for this job. So yeah, we'll unscrew the PCB now that holds the Sipm, and we'll populate it with the resistors and diodes on the back. We'll also put the 6-pin plug that mounts it to the main PCB board, and then we'll also solder the legs that hold it onto there. So what we're going to be looking at is a populated PCB board for the Sipm on the actual block mounted on top of there by the standoffs. So I'll get on with the next bit. I'll solder the Sipm on first. No, I'll do the resistors on the back of the Sipm first, and then I'll put the Sipm on, and then we'll solder the legs on, and then we can get it finished. Okay, so I've soldered the Sipm and the resistors and a couple of the capacitors on the back of the PCB. I'm going to show you that in a minute. I just want you to have a look at this screen here. This is how we test the Sipm. It's the only way we can do it. We can't plug it in yet because we've got some building to do still on there, but you can see that when we plug the positive and negative, or pin 1 and the cathode, onto the multimeter, we get an infinite reading, and then if we swap it back over, we should get nothing, and we do. So we know that the Sipm has been fitted correctly to the PCB board, because we're actually testing the back of the PCB board here on these 2 pins. Let me show you. So on these 2 pins there, sorry, there and that one there. So you can see, as I said, the capacitors are on there. We've got a couple of resistors, another capacitor. Well, sorry, that's the other way around. Those are the resistors, those are the capacitors, resistors. There we are. And we've also got the Sipm mounted. Now the next job to do is get some coupling gel on the top of the Sipm, and then we can lower the singulate block onto that, and then the only thing that's got to be done, this PCB board is finished then, the only thing that's got to be done then is just got to be wrapped in electrical tape to keep all of the visible light clearly out of it. So I'll get on with that, guys, and I'll get back to you in a few seconds. So we've got the first PCB board finished. We've got the singulate crystal block now attached to the Sipm with the optical gel that gives it a good bond together. Again, I've tested it. I'll just bring the multimeter in so you can see we haven't over tightened the screws that hold the singlet block on, and as you can see we're getting a reading. If I block out the light, you'll see it go to 1. If I remove it, my hand, you'll see it go back up to an infinite number again, and then block it, and then it works. So we know that the Sipm hasn't been damaged, it's been installed correctly. We know that the components have been put on there relatively well. It needs a bit of a polish up on the top before we wrap this up now. This has got to be kept in complete darkness. But this PCB board was probably constituting the majority of the cost of the whole operation. Tomorrow I'm going to start populating the main PCB. So what we've got there is just the Sipm PCB with all its components soldered on, its standoffs ready to go onto this board. I can just put it on there now and just show you what that will look like. Obviously you won't see the singlet block anymore, but you'll just see how that gets mounted onto that PCB via the 6-pin connector underneath. And there you go, guys. It's coming together nicely.